Hey y'all, it's Steve, Hobo with Wood, and this is going to be a long video. We're going to create a Greek or Roman border from scratch. Hang around. Okay, so this video is going to be a long, lengthy video as we go into the hows and the whys in creating this style of border. It's about uniformity, and the minute you copy and trace an image off the internet, if you're able to piece those tiles together and not have to begin to stretch them, you might get by. They might kind of line up, but we're going to show you how to do your own from scratch and guarantee it to be a perfect symmetrical image and not be skewed or look funny in any one area. So let's look at these designs on the internet here, see what I'm talking about. So here I just Googled Greek Roman patterns, and you can see you've probably seen these types of patterns, and maybe you knew they were Greek or Roman, but they're really just repetition. They've taken the same pattern and repeat it over and over, just like it was a tile, just like it was a ceramic tile. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to create we're going to start with creating a single tile that we can repeat, and then we'll modify that single tile as we go along to make it work in our patterns. So these are just some of the more common, and what I'm going to look at today is this pattern right here. We're going to design this pattern not just in a straight line like this, but creating the corners, and well, let's just take a look in Lightburn. So this is a tile that I created from scratch, and we're going to show you how to do this today. Now, some people look at this and it looks extremely complicated, and others look at it and see it as for its root designs, its basic concept. And that's what I see. I look for the simplest part of this design. And the first thing I see is this T right here. This T is what repeats. That T right there. That repeats over and over. It's just inverted every other time. There it's upright. Here they flip it and it's upside down, back upright, upside down. These inner squares are just that. They're just, let's see here, let me ungroup everything. Ungroup. And now we're going to, those two right there, those are just two squares that were put on. In fact, I'm going to delete this. These two inner pieces are just two squares that were added on. We can delete that. So now we're getting down a little bit less complicated. And we see this, if we look at the black line runs non-interrupted. It is one continuous line all the way around the pattern and all the way around the frame. It's not broken with the the four squares on the corners to give it, definition or cap off those corners. So if those are simple, those are just two squares. So if we got rid of those, now we got even more of a basic design. And if you look, I'm going to turn my toolpath or this layer on here. If you look at your lines and how when I say everything is symmetrical, everything lines up from that corner, this line, that's all one straight perfect line. The width, if we look at our ruler, the width from here to here. And I don't really want to put this in line mode right now because I don't want to give away anything, but the thickness of this black line is the same thickness as the space where that T would be. So that's also part of its uniformity. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this T, a singular T. Okay? Now, to make sure that everything is of the exact same dimensions, I'm going to go into my settings, and let's put this in millimeters. Millimeters, go into settings, and if you look at my visual grid, I've got my visual grid set to 1 millimeter, and my grid snap is 0.2. Alright, I've got snap to objects on and snap to grid on. Okay, so I've got a 1 millimeter grid shows right here. Right now, here are the individual pieces I end up creating, but to get there, let's start with our basic T. And I'm going to start with I set this to 1 millimeter, and that's going to be our base unit of measures, 1 millimeter. The lines are going to be 1 millimeter thick. The squares are 1 millimeter square with an outline of distance of 1 millimeter, making that 3 millimeters. So you see what I'm doing? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this T. And if I look at the pattern, if this is 1, well, let's just start drawing. I'm going to zoom in tight here, and these are, the dark grays are 1 millimeter squares each. And I'm going to go into a toolpath with my rectangles, and I'm going to draw out 3 millimeters by 1 millimeter. Then I'm going to do, let's start with 4 millimeters, because we want it to come out longer than it is tall. The first millimeter right here doesn't count, so we're going to go 4 millimeters and 4 millimeters. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5. So we actually need to go out longer on that one. So if we come here, I'm actually going to put all of this, select it all, put it in on actually edit, convert to path, show my nodes. I need to bring this on out another millimeter. Bring these two up a millimeter. Oh, wrong two. Undo that. And I think that is actually a little bit tall. I'm actually going to shrink that. Alright, so that looks better. Now, weld those all together. There's my first basic T. Alright, now, that is a hollow point in this design. That's this piece right here. Now I need to outline those actually, and I think by shortening that I just messed myself up, because the outline's got to be a millimeter thick. So if that's 1 millimeter, that space is 1 millimeter, and that space is, so it's got to be 3 millimeters. That's got to be 3 millimeters. So I'm gonna stretch that back out. And I've got some funky things going on there. So I'm gonna go back to those node edits. Those nodes there don't need to be there, so I can just select delete. Oh, wait a minute. Undo. What's going on there? Oh, it's because that's not a node. That's the showing up as a curve. So let's hit the L for line. And that's better. All right. So now let's look, drawing some rectangles. Let's go ahead and put this on red layer here. We need, actually, you know what? Undo that. It's got to come out a millimeter past the end of it. So if we come to here, we got our snap to grid on. It's got to come to here. Then I'm going to have one that comes from here up to here. Get my crosshairs so I know I'm snap to grid. There we go. Looking for my crosshair. There we go. Nope, that's still not. That's too big. Undo. Put this on align mode. No, don't want that one. I want this one. And now the whole length. Go millimeter past. Millimeter past. And now for the bottom. Leave that millimeters gap. Okay, there is the basics of the first tile. Put that back in fill mode. Now you can see all the overlappings. We're just going to grab these and weld these together. Go back to line mode. When you're in fill mode, it's tough to grab those and weld. Nope. Weld. Okay. Move our T out of the way. Go back to line mode or fill mode. Now it looks like we didn't quite get things lined up. You see there's a little indentation there or a little off. It's okay. I'm going to show you how you can fix that real easy. We're going to go back to line mode. Now we're going to show our nodes. And that node right there is the issue. This node is low. So we're going to bring that up here to our grid. I'm going to highlight that one, hit the letter D. That's where she should be. and you don't have any more unneeded nodes. The only nodes should be in the corners, and there we go. So there is the first piece. Now to create the pattern, the repetition, we're going to use the, put it back in fill mode, we're going to use the array tool. Reverse direction. Alright, now, when you do 0x spacing, they are butted right up against each other. There is no gap there because they are touching. There's 0 spacing. If we put in a 1 millimeter gap, say OK, now they're not connected. But we need that 1 millimeter gap right there because that 1 millimeter gap is what's going to be right here upside down. So now what I need to do, I'm going to put this back in line mode. I'm going to go to my node editing tool. I'll grab these two nodes right here and bring them out to connect. Now, that piece right there, this one is not going to work because it's not long enough. Now, I knew before I did my array that it wasn't going to work, but I wanted you to see why that needed to be that extra millimeter sticking out. So this I can delete. I don't need that. This one, I'm going to hit Control D, duplicate it. I'm going to roll it up here out of the way. I'm going to put it on a toolpath because that is a pattern. That's our number one pattern. Now go back to our array tool. Come here. Start creating our array. We don't want any X spacing, but 0x spacing. That's now touching. And now you can start to see that pattern is duplicating. We'll just stay with 5. Okay. There's the top row. And tell it OK. Now if we take this pattern and say Control D, duplicate it, because we're going to leave that one, original one, up there out of the way. We come over here and use our greater than, rotate it, and when we put this into position, we want to have this space lined up with the outline of the top, or the end of the top row. So this space would be like so. So now we're a millimeter too long. So that very, very, very first design we actually do need, and it would be the end piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here, select my node editing. I'll highlight just those two nodes, zoom in, grab this node and bring it to the corner. Done. Go back to my selector tool, Control D, duplicate that, scroll it up here out of the way, put it on a toolpath, because that is now the end piece. Put this piece on a cut path, or the red layer. Now, there is an issue. We've got this lined up with this. So you see, if we come up here, that's all one straight line, but this from here to here should line up with the piece we just added going down, and it doesn't. So we got to edit that piece. So this piece, selector tool, this piece needs to come up to here. we're going to have to modify that one by selecting the two nodes on it and bring those down there. Now Control D, select that, select it, Control D, move it out, put it on toolpath. So there are 3 unique shapes that are needed to create the first row, end it, and then make the turn. So now, with this piece being longer, I should need our original piece. So Control D, bring it down here, use our greater than, rotate it, grab that corner, bring it up here, and that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. 1, 2. Now let's go back to our array. Now we're going to do rows with 0 spacing. Got to reverse the direction. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I believe we're going to need this piece up here again. So let's see what happens. We'll leave just those 4. Say OK. Select those, put them on the red path. I should have done that before I did the array. Select, Control D, greater than to rotate it. Move it into position, put it on a red path. Grab that arrow, or not the arrow, the corner there. There we go. Did I go too far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For some reason that just doesn't look like a square, but we'll see what happens. Can I take this whole thing, Control D, greater than twice, that rotates it, bring it all down here, grab this corner, select all that. Go ahead and group those temporarily so we know we've got them if we drop it. Grab that corner, and it needs to go there. Yep. So that's the wrong, we needed this piece to start that row out there. But that's easy enough. Right now we can just ungroup all of that. Go to our nodes. Grab those 2 nodes. And now that lines up, that lines up. And Control D, greater than to rotate it. What does that do for us? Looking close. Our nodes. Grab those nodes. Selector tool. Okay. So we ended up needing 3 different shapes in order to create that pattern. And I did it in a form of a square. But by learning to do these techniques this way, you're able to do it in a square or a rectangle and make it fit around your design, your pattern, without having to stretch it and elongate it out of shape. To create those corner pieces, that's really simple. You just select your rectangle tool, hold your shift key to make it a perfect square. Come there, and then back inside 1 millimeter. And you can Control D and duplicate it, move it in place, but as simple as that is, you can just draw them out. Holding your shift key to draw that perfect square on the rectangle tool. Now, why do I feel like it's important to be able to know how to do this instead of just tracing everything offline? One, it's yours, it's unique. Now if we put this in the fill mode so we can really see this, if you had a square design or round design or something, let's just get a piece of artwork in here. Actually add that. Way too big. Shrink her down. And a square border would work. Then if you found a square border online and you just copied and traced it, hey, great, no problem, that'd work. But what if you had a shape like this? Import. No, I don't want to do that. Cancel that. Add graphic to project. There we go. Let's say we're going to do that one, and you wanted to put that in with a border around it. Well, now that square might be too big. You don't want to have all that wasted space. So if you were to, in fact, did I group all that? No, I didn't. Let's take this out of the way. Let's group all of this. Put this in the middle of that group. And now okay, well, I don't really want that to be that big. Well, you can shrink it down, but now you still got a lot of waste, and you're like, okay, well, I'll shrink that in. Well, when you do, you see what happens to your pattern? It's no longer uniform. So it's not scalable unless you scale it on the equal amount X and Y. So, but you can, now that you know how to design this, instead of doing it in a square pattern, and you can design your own around a rectangular shape. And all of these designs, all these patterns, where is she at? If you look at these, they're all just a matter of repetition. It's the same pattern over and over and over again. And if you have the ability to recognize the base pattern that's being repeated, create that one pattern, and then use the array tool to create that pattern. Oh, now I forgot to show you how I do those boxes. All right, that's really not difficult at all. Delete that line there. If we select just this piece here, we can see that its dimensions, in fact, we're going to make this easy on me. We're going to make sure our aspect ratio is locked, and we're just going to tell it to be 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. So now I can grab my square rectangle tool, hold my shift key to draw out a square, and I'm going to tell it to be 100, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, 104. Might be 103 by 104. Put that on a toolpath and center it over this. Nope. Select all of that. Group it all. What I just do? I hit the wrong button. Hit group, stupid. There we go. Now take that pattern, the toolpath, and tell it to go center. Not the center. Center each other, stupid. There we go. All right. So no, I want to make that 103 by 103. Not the whole thing. Undo. Toolpath only. 103, 103. Nope. 102, 102. Well, no. Actually, we're not doing millimeters anymore because this is blown up. So that's 1 millimeter. It's about 1.5, give or take. There's one. That's pretty close. So now I would do my offset outward, and because it is now blown up, it's about 1.5 millimeters. Say okay. Select both of those, put it on the toolpath or the black path. And I can come in here and actually just start drawing a rectangle or square. Need to be bigger than that. Smaller than that. And I'm not able to use my millimeters here because this has already been blown up and skewed and stretched. But that's close enough for right now. So that, now we're going to do an inward offset of that one. And there's your frame around that design. Put your little squares up there. And you got a completed border. There's another pattern I'm working with. I'm also going to start working with some circular patterns. But what you're going to want to look for is that very, very root repetition. In this case, it was nothing more than just that T. And if you started out in a unit of measure of 1 millimeter, or if you did it at 10 millimeters, you just know that however thick or tall that one little bar is, that's how wide you want the outline of it to be, and you just create an outline of that, and then you create the array, stretching it and shrinking it as you need. But this is not hard. This ain't rocket science. You just have to have the ability to see it for what it is, which is a very, very, very basic design in repetition. So hopefully that was somewhat helpful, somewhat enlightening. And what I probably will do is I'm probably going to create several different tiles, different designs like this. When I was creating that design, I ended up with 3 different shapes that would be needed throughout that puzzle to create that frame. Then the accent corner piece. Well, for every pattern, you're probably going to have that same type of situation where you're going to have 3 or 4 different tiles that will be used to create that same a pattern, various patterns. I'm going to probably create several of these and offer these available on hobowithwood.com. If you do not want to create the basic tiles themselves, but you're okay with doing the array to create your own patterns, because that's the key there. If you can create, if you've got those basic shapes, then you can use those to create the size frame that you need for your design and be able to keep its uniformity. Keep that really crisp look to it and not lose anything when you start shrinking it or elongating it. All right, I'm going to jump off here. I hope this has been somewhat informative. I hope you haven't lost. There were a lot of techniques that I did not explain as I was going that I have discussed in other videos that if you want to look at node editing, in fact, I'm going to show you one other quick thing I did not do, and what I wasn't going to do, or it's if we ungroup all of this, you can see I never welded all these together, and I left these as individual pieces for a reason, because right now, let's come over here, turn you on. All right, here is one of those patterns, and will it show me the preview up here? Nope, I got to put it on the workbed. So let's just get rid of all of this, bring you down here to the workbed. Now look at the preview. Here it's saying 1 hour and 31 minutes and 35 seconds. I looked at it before, it was 1:31:16. But it's an hour and a half to engrave that pattern, and that is only 6.5 by 6.5, and it's going to be an hour and a half to do that as it stands. And this is doing it on diode settings at 50 millimeters a second or 300 millimeters a minute and 80% power, and it's an hour and a half to do that. But I'm going to show you something. Let me show you something. We move that out of the way. Here are different versions. Now I've played with this before, where what I would do is, and actually, you know what? Let's put that back for a second so you can see what it's doing when it does what it does. Go back to preview. You can see all of these traversal moves. It's moving horizontally all the way up and just doing a complete fill. Well, all of that red is wasted energy and wasted time. So what I did when I was first learning how to do these, I said, I want to try and get rid of all of that wasted energy, that was wasted traversal moves. So I did this. And it cut it down from an hour and a half to 30 minutes. 29 minutes and 31 seconds. And the difference there is I've got it on two different layers. Now the speed and the power is the same. The LPI is the same. Nothing's changed except I put on two different layers. And what I did was the black layer is on a scan angle of 0, and the blue layer, it should have been on a scan angle of 90. There we go. Now look at that preview. All right, now that cut it down to 25 minutes rather. So if we look at this, it fills that. Now it starts filling like so. But I just showed you something else that was different. Didn't mean to. Some of you might have caught it. Let's move this up here. What is that? Get rid of you. Okay. So what are the differences in all these? Everything's at 2.5% overscanning with a 0.1 line interval, or 254 lines per inch. All of them at the same speed and power. That's 0 degrees. That's 90 degrees. That one's 0 degrees. So why is that one different than the black? Oh, the right here. So the black is fill groups together. This is fill shapes individually. Layer 9 is fill shapes individually. 13 is fill shapes individually. And then the green one is fill shapes individually. All right. So fill groups together versus fill groups individually. This was 1 hour and a half, 29 minutes, 26 minutes, 25 minutes. So this was the least of the four rather. And how was that one set up? So it's filling shapes individually, and it's the 0 and 90. Now, if we look at this mystery one here, preview it, it's 29 minutes. 29 minutes versus an hour and a half. They're both on the black layer. They're both done at the same settings. Get you out of the way. So if those are on the same black layer, the same speed and power, why is preview? Why is this one showing an hour and a half? And this one is showing 29 minutes. You notice all the traversal moves are gone. Or if they're all on the same layer, how did that happen? Because I didn't change the scan angle. It's all being done. What was that? Oh, the 0 scan angle, right? Yep, they're all done on the 0 scan angle. So what's different? I'll show you what's different. Let's put this on a line mode. And this one, I welded all of the shapes together. That's one continuous shape. And this one, you see the individual tiles are still there. So that's why I did not weld those together as I was creating it. Obviously I did initially. That's when I seen it was an hour and a half to do that one burn. I said, I got to fix that. I got to make that better. How do I make it better? I made it better by not welding those together, leaving those as individual shapes, and put that back in fill mode and fill shapes individually. Let's see what happens. First, let's go back. I thought you'd go to fill. I didn't tell it. Okay, fill. Okay. And preview that. Because it's the computer is going to its next closest place to start, it's not scanning all the way back and forth, even though I have it set on fill groups together. Let's fill shapes individually. Preview. It's doing the same thing because the computer recognized whenever it was in the first setting, fill groups together, but it was individual shapes and not fill all shapes at once. Now, so if I tell it to fill all shapes at once, and look at that same pattern again, we should have all the traversal moves back, and we do. And we're back to an hour and a half. So leaving those individual shapes, fill groups together or fill shapes individually, and depending on your location, your pattern, your design, fill groups together may or may not work. But if you tell it fill shapes individually, it should have that really low scan time every time. So when you're doing these patterns, if you've watched this video long enough, that's the real takeaway here on this, because you've just cut your engrave time on this pattern to a third. So those who thought they learned everything they could a minute ago and have checked out halfway through this video, they're going to spend a lot of time waiting on their laser, but you get the payoff. Alright, so this has been a long video. I've been all over the place. I usually am. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. I thank you for watching, and I'm going to get out of here and go do something for the patrons on Patreon. In fact, hang tight. Oh, so I've been doing a lot of door hangers, Spidey Man, a bunch of different things. But I was contacted by a grandfather who said he wanted something to make for his princess. So we've got away from the superheroes, dirt bikes, and dogs and pets, and I've created a unicorn for the princess. And this is a door hanger set on your door sill. It's 3 layers, and it's not dry yet. I got to sand it down and put one more finish on it. But this is what I'm doing for my patrons for a free design this week. So if you were a patron on patreon.com, you would be having access to this as well. I show them how to set this up. What I provide is the basic pattern, and then show you how to put your name in there if you don't know how to do that. So it'll be truly customizable. You'll have the basic shape, and you can use this over and over and over and make millions of dollars and get rich and go, if it wasn't for Hobo, I wouldn't be where I am today. Now, on that note, I am out of here. I think I've told you all that about 3 or 4 times in this video, but I mean it this time. I'm out.